Dune Awakening might be the first real survival MMO. We got some new info and some new gameplay, and it sounds and looks pretty amazing. There's a couple of different sources for the information that we're going to talk about today. One of them is a Force Gaming video from a couple of days back where he just had an interview with one of the devs and he shared the information. Another one is that Sacriel on Twitch was watching a live presentation that they were giving at Gamescom, and the devs were talking about it there, and he had a dev interview. And then immediately after that, they basically posted the same footage on YouTube with a different commentary. So we're going to talk about all of that, the release date, and more. So let's start just with the gameplay and the way that this is going to work, because it's somewhat relevant to the servers. Is it an MMO? All these kind of questions. When you start, you'll start in the spaceship, and I'm not going to talk about the lore, we're just going to get to the actual points. You'll make your character there, and then you'll crash land on the desert of Arrakis. You will then be in a starting area that I think apparently takes like 10-15 minutes. This is obviously just the tutorial section. I think by the end of this section, you get a bike, and then you go through the rest of the Hagar Basin. And the Hagar Basin is basically your leveling zone, and is a PvE zone. It's not like there's any PvP going on here, right? And the ultimate goal is to build a flying vehicle, the Ornithopter. This apparently will take around about 60 hours. But obviously, these are beta numbers and everything is subject to change. Now, the Hagar Basin, as I said, is PvE, and it's worth noting that this is layered. I think they're talking about around about maybe like 40 people or a little bit more, a little bit less, being in this zone with you. But on your realm, if you will, like the whole world, there could be many different layers. We'll talk more about the servers and stuff like that in a minute. It is definitely worth noting for sure that this is a survival game. You need to keep in mind your hydration, need to be aware of your temperature and other things like that. You want to stay in the shadows, for example, so you don't overheat. If you don't have enough spice, then you'll get spice withdrawal symptoms. You know, there's resources here that you're going to have to manage. And as we said, in the Hagar Basin, this is the bit where you basically learn the game, you level up, you build your base. It has this sort of like cool holographic system. I mean, it's nothing revolutionary, right? It just shows you where the piece is going to go, and then it builds it, and you need the resources required. To get the resources, though, to build your base, well, you got to go out in the open world, right? You got to go and do it. Apparently, the Hagar Basin is around about the same size as their previous game, Conan Exiles, and that was relatively big. But don't worry, it gets even bigger. So to get these resources, you can go out and gather. One of the things that they show is scanning this rock, which then highlights this seam in which you then cut through, and you get the resources. Really cool system. Sort of wonder if that would work against bots, because obviously that line is going to be in different places, and it's not as simple as just going over to a resource and pressing E. I like the look of that. There will also be things in the open world, just NPCs that maybe you want to go and kill, loot all the resources nearby, etc. There will be these things called eco labs, which are effectively dungeons, although the word dungeon I'm not sure really applies to Dune. You can do them solo apparently, but if you're going with a team, it'll be quicker. And there's mobs, probably a boss, and I think they're trying to keep whatever's at the end sort of to themselves for now. There will also be these crashed spaceships. Now, obviously, everybody around in the area will see this, but you want to rush over to those and get the resources from that as well. In the Force Gaming video, he sort of said that these would be PvP, even in the Hagar Basin, but in the gameplay footage, that doesn't seem like that's the case. It looks like in the Hagar Basin, it's just PvE, and then obviously in the PvP zone, it's PvP, but we'll talk more about PvP in a minute. There are also going to be these things called spice blows, which is the main area where spice will be available. Now, everybody on the server will sort of see that because, you know, it's a big ass plume. Now, I'm not sure if they happen in the Hagar Basin or not. Not certain about that. Now, once you've built your base, which you can then save as a blueprint, by the way, and, you know, build it anywhere, you'll then build your Ornithopter. This will effectively act like a mount, apparently, and you can go from different areas of the map. The overworld map. This overworld map sort of looks like a loading screen in a way, but you fly to where you want to go. Now, you can go to the social hubs here, like the cities and stuff like that. There you'll be able to buy, sell goods, talk with people, etc. But the main area that you're going to want to go to is the deep desert. Now, the deep desert is a pure PvP zone. You don't lose your items if you die though, you just lose your resources, the things that you've gathered. In fact, the only time you actually lose everything is if you get eaten by the giant sandworm, which sort of makes sense. The deep desert though, as I said, is PvP exclusive. It's not like flagged or anything like that, you're PvP anywhere. But how many people are in that zone with you? In theory, it can be the entire world, the entire realm. Now, in the interview with Sacriel, I'm pretty sure they mentioned around about 900 or 1,000 people. And then they're going to have this sort of like server meshing technology where the deep desert, for example, will be broken up into smaller areas and they'll have their own server so that, you know, if there's 100 people fighting here and 100 people fighting elsewhere, nobody's going to crash, in theory. The numbers there, by the way, are subject to change. Now, there is a question whether or not that's going to fit a category of real MMO, especially when you compare it to other games like Rust and Ark and stuff like that. My view is that it's persistent, there's an open world, you can meet people that you weren't expecting to meet. I sort of feel like it will be an MMO technically. It's worth noting that there will be sort of like a soft reset. You don't lose anything. I don't think you lose your equipment or anything like that. But the desert each week will get effectively a wipe. There'll be a sandstorm, everything will get wiped, things will look different, there'll be new points of interest and stuff like that. And any bases that you built, well, they're just getting destroyed, right? And the point behind that is apparently in previous games, people were a bit annoyed that their bases were getting destroyed. So in this game, instead of making it so that you don't get your base destroyed, they're making it so that it always gets destroyed and you know not to put too many resources in it because ultimately you know it's going away. The deep desert, I think they mentioned, is around about 10 times bigger than the Hagar Basin. So that is huge. The deep desert, I suspect, will be pretty much filled with big guilds. Now, for guild sizes, they mentioned that it might be around about 50 people per guild, but I guess there's nothing stopping people from teaming up. In the deep desert, it's sort of the same as the Hagar Basin, apart from its PvP. Go to the eco labs, get materials, get blueprints for items like guns and weapons and stuff like that. Go to the big spice balls that have occurred, because spice is a resource you're going to want to get. And you'll probably do it with your guild. They were talking about some real cool strategic gameplay that you could have, which was to get the thumpers to try and attract the worm, to try and capture other guilds who were maybe trying to stealth upon you and stuff like that. The gameplay sounds really cool and has a lot of dynamic potential, I think. I personally think that the game has a lot of potential. However, I think it's pretty much going to be mostly a PvP game. I'm not sure if you're pure PvEer, if you'll want to bother with this, because most of the content's going to be in the deep desert and you can be killed. If that doesn't sound like something that interests you, then this game probably isn't for you. We did also see some minute-to-minute gameplay, so we saw some shootouts, some flamethrowing, some melee combat, and more. And there were a couple of things that people didn't really like, I think, in this gameplay trailer. Some people didn't like the graphics, which I thought was a little bit weird. For me, visually, it looked quite good. There are times where maybe it's not like the most impressive thing in the universe, but it's on Unreal Engine 5, and I think it looks good overall. But some things that I did think were maybe a little bit lackluster were probably some of the animations, especially in melee fighting, and I think some of the sound effects as well. Whilst it might make sense logically, because I think they're shooting darts rather than bullets or something like that, the little pew 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 sound just got a little bit irritating quite quickly. As for the melee animations, Sacriel sort of asked a question to one of the game design leads there, and he said, obviously they're going to be working on animations, you know, it is a work in progress. And Sacriel talked about how it actually feels quite good when you're playing it and there's a lot more action happening. The people who are recording the footage are doing it in a way that is trying to demonstrate the gameplay rather than playing sort of like a natural person would. And I do suspect that if you're playing a little bit quicker, it'll feel smoother and look smoother as well. I don't think the animations were that bad. I don't think the visuals were bad. I thought they were quite good. I did not like the sound though. The sound really, you know, did my head in. Other than that, I really do think this game is going to have a good audience. They did announce that it's going to release in early 2025. I would assume that means maybe like February or March. Now, they did not mention early access. I think this is actually coming out properly getting a release. Console, by the way, will be coming at some other point, but controller support is included in the PC version. But I don't think it's early access. It's buy to play, no sub fee. There will be microtransactions. Now, some people, when they hear microtransactions, instantly think pay to win. There's no indication of that right now. Microtransactions could simply be cosmetics. We have no idea. I'm not going to dwell on it too much. As I mentioned, people will say, is this really an MMO? I know some Rust servers can have like thousands of people, but I think this is going to be an MMO officially. Yes, there'll be like layers in the Hagar Basin, but the open desert, the deep desert, that sounds like an MMO, and I know some people will be not happy with the numbers, but I'm not sure why people are that bothered. Do you want 10,000 people guilds like, you know, some people do in other games? Or do you actually want to have an impact yourself? For me, the numbers are probably fine. 1,000 people per server might be a little bit small, but obviously these numbers are subject to change. Let's see where it ends up. I'm personally not sure if this is my kind of game. I will give it a go when it comes out. Absolutely, there's no reason not to. I don't think there's going to be anything sort of major coming out around about then. Hopefully it's good. There's no reason to hope it's bad or anything, is there? So let's see what they do. Let's see what we get. For now, have a most beautiful day. Like and subscribe. Goodbye.